It was a cold, foggy morning when Inspector Roy arrived at the scene. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale golden light over the quiet town of Willowbrook. The body of Mr. Henry Whitaker, a wealthy businessman, lay motionless on the ground near the old oak tree in the park. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide open, as if he had seen something terrifying before his death. Inspector Roy, a tall man with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, knelt beside the body. He noticed a small, strange mark on Mr. Whitaker's neck, a tiny puncture wound. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle. It was as if death had come silently in the night. The park was empty except for a few early morning joggers who had stumbled upon the body. Roy questioned them, but they claimed to have seen nothing unusual. "We just found him lying here," one of them said, shivering. "It's so strange. He looks peaceful, but also scared." Roy's assistant, Constable Lily, arrived shortly after. She was young, but observant, and she quickly began taking notes. "What do you think, Inspector?" she asked. "I think this is no ordinary death," Roy replied. "There's something odd about it. Let's start by investigating Mr. Whitaker's background." Henry Whitaker was a well-known figure in Willowbrook. He owned several businesses and was respected by many, but he also had enemies. His recent business deals had caused tension in the town, and some people were not happy with his success. Roy and Lily visited Whitaker's home, a large mansion on the outskirts of town. The house was quiet, and the staff seemed nervous. The butler, a man named James, greeted them at the door. "Mr. Whitaker was a good man," James said, his voice trembling. "I can't believe he's gone." Roy asked to see Whitaker's study. The room was filled with books, papers, and a large desk. On the desk, Roy noticed a half-written letter. It was addressed to someone named Evelyn, and the words were hurried and messy. "Evelyn, I fear for my life. Someone is watching me. I don't know who, but I can feel their presence. If something happens to me, please take care of." The letter ended abruptly. Roy frowned. "Who is Evelyn?" he asked James. The butler hesitated. "Evelyn is Mr. Whitaker's sister. She lives in the next town over." They were very close. Roy decided to pay Evelyn a visit. Evelyn Whitaker was a frail woman in her late 50s. She lived in a small cottage surrounded by a garden. When Roy and Lily arrived, she was sitting by the window, staring into the distance. "I knew something like this would happen," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Henry told me he was being followed. He didn't know who it was, but he was scared." Roy showed her the letter. "Do you have any idea who might have wanted to harm your brother?" Evelyn shook her head. Henry had many enemies, but he never spoke of them. He was a private man. As Roy and Lily left the cottage, Lily whispered, "Do you think Evelyn is hiding something?" "Perhaps," Roy replied. "But we need more evidence." Back in Willowbrook, Roy decided to visit the park again. He wanted to retrace Whitaker's steps. The fog had lifted, and the park was now bathed in sunlight. Roy examined the ground near the oak tree and found something unusual, a small, empty vial hidden in the grass. He picked it up and sniffed it. The vial had a faint, sweet smell. "Poison," Roy muttered. "This must be what killed him." Lily's eyes widened. But how did it get into his system? There was no sign of forced entry or struggle. Roy thought for a moment. The puncture wound on his neck. It's possible someone injected him with the poison while he was unaware. The next clue came from the local pharmacist. Roy showed him the vial, and the man nodded. "This is a rare poison," he said. "It's fast-acting and leaves no trace. Only a few people in town would know how to use it. Who? Roy asked. The pharmacist hesitated. There's a man named Victor Lane. He's a chemist and has been experimenting with different substances. He might know something. Roy and Lily went to Victor Lane's laboratory. The man was nervous when they questioned him. I didn't kill Whitaker, he exclaimed. Yes, I know about the poison, but I didn't use it. Roy studied Victor's face. Then who did? Victor hesitated. I don't know. But I heard Whitaker had a falling out with his business partner, Charles Moore. Maybe you should talk to him. Charles Moore was a stern man with a cold demeanor. He denied any involvement in Whitaker's death, but Roy noticed something strange, a small cut on Charles's hand. How did you get that? Roy asked. Charles shrugged. I cut myself while gardening, but Roy wasn't convinced. He remembered the puncture wound on Whitaker's neck. You used the poison, didn't you? Charles's face turned pale. I didn't mean to kill him. He was going to ruin me. I just wanted to scare him. Roy sighed. You'll have to come with us, Mr. Moore. As the sun set over Willowbrook, Roy stood outside the police station, deep in thought. The case was solved, but it left a bitter taste in his mouth. Death at dawn had brought darkness to the town, and Roy knew that justice, though served, could never undo the tragedy. Another mystery solved, Lily said, joining him. Yes, Roy replied, but at what cost? The two walked back into the station, ready to face whatever mystery came next.